Hello, Olathe School District. It's Rich Wilson, the Director of Assessment again. As we continue to work towards the district-wide adoption of Mastery Connect for the next school year, I thought it might be beneficial if you heard from some teachers who are already using the tool. I asked each of them to describe different facets of Mastery Connect and how they are using it in their work with students. Their answers are very exciting and revealing, and I hope they answer some of your own questions.
Mastery Connect does is it allowed me to see, as a math teacher, I see like groups of standards together. So like if I'm working with expressions, I see a group of standards that fit into that. Mastery Connect allows me to look at all of those standards one by one and see what piece of that skill they're missing. So instead of looking at, and this is, we've heard before, don't teach the resource, teach the standards, right? But within my resource, there are like 4 standards grouped together, and you need all of them because math builds. But what Mastery Connect does is let me look at and say, oh, but what's just this standard? What can they do here? And then we can kind of look at that, fix that if we need to, before we move on to this standard.
It works. You want to know Ponyboy's last name or his oldest brother's name, and that's just reading comprehension and checks, not the standards. And you need a little bit of both, but
and it totally changes our conversation. When we did the Heritage Project, we talked with you guys about this. When we did the Heritage Project, we were trying to decide how to grade it. It really revamped our grading scale of, well, wait a minute, but that's not what we're trying to assess. That's not one of our standards. And it just brings that conversation to the forefront and makes you really reevaluate how you grade and what you're doing with the kids.
And we didn't have to change the project because we knew what we were doing is good.
Mm-hmm.
But just kind of taking away some of the pieces, like maybe it wasn't as pretty, but that's not the content. Like, did they still know the material? Were they able to make the connections? So
I think within the district, there's obviously a huge push to really focus within our teaching on those particular standards within math, for example, and being new to second grade and not really having a firm grasp of maybe everything that kids are supposed to learn and I'm supposed to teach has been a challenge. So the tool Mastery Connect makes it much easier for me to go through, scan through, see what kids need to know, and then assess them and see where they're lacking or see where they're excelling.
That we do it a lot more frequently because it's a lot easier to do with Mastery Connect. We do it a lot more frequently, which is good for the kids and it's good for us. We can get a better picture of our kids with those standards.
It takes some of the pressure off. It can be just a question or two because it's focusing on one standard. So yeah, it's simpler. So it's less daunting to feel like, oh, assessment. Mastery Connect makes it kind of easy, and then the colors show up and you're like, okay, here's my group.
I can see immediately what the results are and on some of the assessments through Mastery Connect, the kids get the immediate feedback and they see what their percent was. On others, like if they're open-ended and I have to grade them, I can call the kid back up to my desk right there in that same class period and show them what they did right, did wrong. Then they can go home that night for homework and practice like the pieces of that standard that they missed.
So I'm able to assess my students in class and in that same time frame, be able to give them feedback, and I'm able to kind of go through that test, and it takes me 10 minutes, and I have good data at that point. It doesn't take all hour to do my assessments and get the results back, and so it really works as a true formative.
A good tool to see what kind of assessment writer I am, to see if the questions I'm asking are the right questions, to see if the questions I'm asking cover what the kids need to know, or are the questions tricking up the kids? Are the questions not particularly what they might need to know? And so it's really made me reflect on the assessments I write, the questions I write, and how to interpret those results.
Time that I'm spending with my kids and with looking at interventions, I'm more intentional and more effective in the instruction and in the reteaching of the material?
For the most part, it just keeps you focused on standards because you attach the each question back to a standard. So every assessment that you put in there, you know, is specifically what you're testing. And then the other thing it's done is it's made my assessments much shorter, where I'm really focused on maybe just one specific standard at a time.
In the long term, it helps me figure out what I need to go reteach, what pieces I need to focus on with what kids. It helps me more easily identify the kids that didn't catch things on the first or second or third try through something. So I'm able to identify a single skill they need as opposed to reteaching the whole concept over and over.
And they're quick results. And so you know immediately on one day how those kids are doing with that standard, and you don't have to wait for those results to come back weeks later, which is nice.
For me, having a tool like Mastery Connect is really, really great. We have such a wide variety of ability levels and students at Westview in particular that really trying to hone in on what kids need can be kind of difficult sometimes. So having an assessment tool like it, where you can see where kids are struggling within particular math standards, for example, is really, really useful.
I think for me, what was maybe the most surprising in that 48-hour challenge is just how fast, how intuitive the program is. So how easy it was for my colleagues to pick it up. It was immediate. I mean, they were very quick at creating formatives, putting formatives out there. I think for us, the ability to share, we're able to share within Mastery Connect. And so for us, I think it's going to be a really useful tool in that we can share with one another. We're not all creating our own formatives kind of isolated.
The story that I always share is I have a girl she's got 100% language arts. I mean, if you were to look at the grade book, she's got straight A's, and if her parent was to say, how is she in language arts? I would be forced to say she has mastered the content. And with Mastery Connect, she takes these different formative assessments, and she has not mastered. She is definitely red or yellow in all the standards that we've assessed so far. So it definitely gives you a picture of she's got 100% language arts, but it's because she's a really hardworking student. It's not necessarily that she's mastered the skills and the standards. So that, I think, it paints a much better picture for you.